the the player object shows up in the top left-hand corner of the screen. Top left-hand corner of the screen is the registration point of 0, 0. The object, when it was created, if we look at that object, we can see that it's positioning itself based on its registration point. So you can see that registration point. There are times in situations where you will want to have the object centered on its registration point because that will simplify some of the coding that you do. I typically always just leave mine in the top left-hand corner unless there's a pressing reason to change it. Certain shooter kinds of games where you're launching projectiles and missiles and things like that, it is easier if you adjust the registration point so that you maybe center the object onto it. But for the most part, it's not a big deal. So if I do put that there and test my movie, you'll see that, again, that registration point shows up. You can see how it lines up. So I'll just leave them down there. Now, if I want to make him move, if I want to make my player move, if I want to just declare he has a new position, X or Y, I just set his X or Y position. Player.x equals 20, player.y equals 100. I can test it, and sure enough, it moves him on screen. So I can specify that, but that's not as much fun as having it where it's interactive, that he moves based on my mouse. So if I want to do that, I have to create an enter frame loop. So I have to create that loop where every enter frame cycle. So every time my Flash movie cycles through a new frame, it updates the position of my player. So I can accomplish that by simply saying player.add event listener. And we did talk a little bit about event listeners last time because we had the fork moving across the screen. Fortunately, I'm not as hungry this evening, so I'm not feeling as troubled by forks and chocolate cake and things like that. Though revisiting that project, when I showed it to someone else later in the week, it was like, oh, I want chocolate cake. I want chocolate cake. It's good. So I say player add event listener, and the event I'm listening for is an event dot enter frame, and I can call this player loop. Now, I called that player loop. I could have called it anything I wanted. Some code references will recommend you use something like on enter frame. So we reference all enter frame or all kind of events with on mouse click, on enter frame, on this, on that. Some people like that verb so they know that it's a function referenced by an event, so they're able to debug or understand the code based on how things have been named. So it's part of naming conventions. I haven't subscribed to that theory yet. For me, I haven't gotten to a point where I want to do that because I get sick of typing the word on. You will find something works for you at some point. So now I can define this function that's called by this enter frame event by saying function. Same way we define variables, we say var and then we say the variable name. Here I will say function and then the function name, player loop, and then I put a e colon, not semicolon, colon, and now the type of event is event, and then colon, again, void, and then do a curly brace, hit return, it puts in my closing curly brace, and now I'm a pretty happy camper at this point because now I can define where I want this to be, and I can just simply say something like player.y, because I want my player to go up and down, equals mouse y. So I've now said player, listen for the enter frame event, and when that happens, run the player loop function. Player loop function is defined as setting the y of player equal to the mouse's y. Now if I test and run this, I should see player sticking to the Y, the X not changing, because once I did my initial set to 20 in this example, it should stay. So if I test this and verify, okay, there it is. So we can see that it moves up and down based on the movement of my mouse. And if I wanted to have it move wherever the mouse is, so it's like a trailing cursor, I could say player X is equal to mouse X. And that will allow it to trail the mouse wherever it goes. So now he's following me around. Notice he's following me based on the registration point. He's not centered on me. He's following it based on where my registration point is. So this is one of the techniques you can use for making objects to follow. So if I wanted him to be centered on my mouse, then it would make sense to modify my artwork so the registration point is in the center of my player artwork so that the two coincide. But now I have it following quite nicely, and maybe I'll just leave it so it doesn't just move up and down like Celery Man, but the player can move wherever my mouse is. We'll set that up on screen.